Hello and welcome to FPL Have a Beer, where I invite you to have a beer with me while I discuss FPL by myself or with company. Please like if you enjoy the video, and at the time of recording, the channel is around 100 subscribers away from 500 subscribers, and it's my dream to get the channel up to 500 subscribers by its 5th birthday, and by 5th birthday I mean its 5th month birthday. So please hit that subscribe button. It would mean the world to me if you do that. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So welcome to another interview in the Meet the FPL Manager, Meet the Content Creator interview series, where I asked one of our lovely FPL content creators, you're over there, to join me to talk about their experiences of content creation and FPL, their thoughts on FPL and mental health, and we have a general chat about FPL and how their season is going towards the end of the interview. So for the 19th interview in the series, I have the pleasure of being joined by a relatively new FPL content creator who's exploded onto the scene over the past year, season or so, FPL Pricey, aka Sam. Sam, it's great to have you on the channel, mate. This interview will be coming out straight after what I'm going to call my holy trinity of interviews with Let's Talk FPL, Andy, Raptor and Az. They're the last 3 videos, so no pressure, mate, at all.
Oh my, yeah, I'm nowhere near that sort of level. Maybe one day, but wow, coming straight after those 3 is going to be a little bit difficult, isn't it?
No pressure. No, I'm sure. I'm joking, of course. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. Thanks so much for having me on the show as well. And I must say, your intro talking about me could equally be about you, someone coming onto the scene very quickly and rising up fast. So yeah, loving the channel, watched a few of your shows now, and the one that you just released, dating the pod now already, but going back to yesterday, watched the one with Ross, and that was a really good interview as well. So yeah, great work so far, mate. Really enjoying it, and it's nice to see something a little bit different in the community as well. So yeah, I'm a relatively new one myself. I know the struggle, and yeah, enjoying the process so far.
Awesome, thank you, mate. So I know you said you've watched a couple of interviews. So I generally start out just by asking a bit about yourself. So could you tell us where did you grow up? Who do you support? First memories of football, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so simple terms, I can answer all 3 of those questions with one word, and that's Southampton. So I grew up.
The background gives it away a bit, doesn't it?
It does a little bit. So if you're watching along on YouTube closely, you'll see the Southampton flag behind me. Yeah, I was born in Southampton Hospital. Grew up in Hedge End area, so pretty close to Southampton, just outside, right next to Paultons Park. If anyone's from around that area, I'm not sure if it's still called Paultons Park, but I was there until about 5 years old. Then moved up north a little bit, not far, to the Berkshire area. So I'm in Newbury at the moment, but supported Southampton as long as I can remember. As soon as I knew what football was, it was Southampton that was going to be my first team. I remember going to my first match. I think it was a 2-2 draw between Southampton and Villa. I think Kevin Davies scored a last-minute equaliser or something.
It was a big lump, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. He had Bolton legend as well, and yeah, all sorts.
Didn't he move to Blackburn and he was absolutely terrible there? Was that Kevin Davies?
Maybe. I don't know. Blackburn doesn't ring a bell. Bolton, definitely. I can picture him in the white Bolton shirt. Not sure about Blackburn, maybe. I mean, I was young, so I don't remember.
I remember a Southampton striker, because I'm a Newcastle fan, and everyone was comparing him as he's going to be the next Alan Shearer, and then he moved.
BT.
Oh, Beattie, that's what
I reckon James Beattie.
Yeah, that may be I'm thinking of, yeah. And then he was terrible.
Yeah, because he went to Everton as well. Yeah, it never really worked out for him. But I loved him. He was probably the first player I really loved, was James Beattie, which shows what my age is at the moment. But yeah, I remember going to the Villa game, and the only reason we went was to get the points on our card to get to the Man United game. So we ended up going to both of those games that season, and I was just hooked from there. There was no stopping me, and Southampton was in my blood from that point onwards.
Yeah, I've only been to Southampton once, and it was for a job interview, and I live in London. It was at one of the Southampton universities, because I'm a lecturer, and I didn't get the job, but I just remember it being the longest. I think I've got bad memories of Southampton just because it was so bloody far to go for a job interview. It was like 3 hours on the train or something. It's like, if you're going to make that sort of journey, you really have to think you've got a really good chance of getting the job, I think. um, so yeah, what's it like? I had a couple of questions down about supporting Southampton because I've never actually met someone who supports Southampton. What's it like supporting a club who go up and down so much in terms of the Premier League, basically?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I would call it a roller coaster, but not in the sense that we're just up and down all the time. Just emotionally, we have had seasons and periods of time, quite long periods of time, where we've been in the Premier League and competitive. But throughout my life and across my young years, but then also more recently, it has been more up and down, more turbulent. And I guess there's a double-edged sword to that. On one side, it can be frustrating. Like a season like we're having right now is obviously horrible. No football fan wants to go through that. But we've just come off the back of one of the most amazing feelings any football fan can ever have, which is going up on the final day in the playoff final. Obviously beating Leeds in the playoff final at Wembley was one of the best football memories I'm ever going to have. So you take the highs with the lows when you're a team that does battle it out a little bit in maybe the lower echelons of the Premier League, but also the upper echelons of the Championship. We've also seen some darker days as well, where obviously we basically went into administration. We got the points deduction all the way down to League One. And so I've seen a little bit of like the league structure and the league football through those years as well. And I have to say, and I would say this because we're going to get relegated, it is a lot of fun when you're down there.
Do you think?
Yeah, well.
I heard somewhere they've got the worst record or they're on track, because Derby in 20 years ago are the worst. Are they actually on track to beat that?
So we should get past them. We need one more win or three more, basically 3 more points, and we'll get past them, because that Derby side, unfortunately for them, were really quite horrific.
Horrible. Yeah, they were horrible.
I remember the only player I remember playing in that 11 was Robbie Savage. Outside of that, I've got very little memory. But,
shows you all you need to know, doesn't it?
It does. And not even a Robbie Savage in his best years either. So yeah, Southampton, unfortunately, we were closing in on that record, and we still might get it. But yeah, I think we'll just about get past it, and maybe people will just forget about this season in a few years. But we weren't really ready to come up to the Premier League in the first place. We didn't really have the squad for it, and there was a naivety to the way we played. Quite an exciting naivety to watch at times. Russell Martin's style of play was fun to watch, but it just wasn't ready for the Premier League at this point in time. So yeah, unfortunately, we've all come to terms with the fact that we're going back down, and that is the life as a football fan when you are, let's say, like a Norwich or a West Brom or a Sunderland in previous years as well, had those ups, downs between the Premier League and the Championship. You get used to it a little bit, and you look forward to being back in the Championship, where you feel a little bit more comfortable and you can go to all of the games feeling like at least there's a chance that you'll come away with 3 points. Whereas now, this season, I'm not even that far away from Southampton now where I live, but I've not really gone to many games because I just think, well, I'm going to get a bit annoyed by the end of the day, and I'm going to waste 30, 40 quid because we're just not going to get any points out of it. So I'm kind of looking forward to
a friend of the channel, Elite Steve-O from Elite FPL. I don't know if you know him, but he's a supporter of Burnley who are, similar up and down. And I've actually heard him because I'm on their Patreon. He's actually said that maybe there should be an option when you win the Championship to say, no, we don't want to go into the Premier League, just so you can continue winning.
I think there's too much money on offer for any of those clubs. Like it's so much of a benefit to anyone who gets promoted, right? Like financially, to even then get the parachute payments when you go back down, like we're going to be better off for it. But yeah, obviously if you build your side in a way that you have really long contracts and you're paying loads of money to try and survive in the first place, then it can screw you over a little bit when you get relegated, and all those players are like very tough to shift on. But Burnley seem to be a club that know what they're doing when it comes to getting up to the Premier League, but then also building a model that is sustainable if they were to go down as well. And I think there's something that we can learn from that too.
It's quite like Southampton, because they basically got relegated from Vincent Kompany trying to play two attacking, didn't they? There's quite a few parallels there. The other thing I had
similar, yeah.
The other thing I had written down. Well, I'll ask you first. Who's your favourite Southampton player?
Now or of all time?
Of all time.
Oof. All time, I've got a soft spot for Dusan Tadic. I absolutely love that guy.
Okay.
What he could do with the football was incredible. He was so underappreciated as well when he was in the Premier League. Luckily, when he went to Ajax, he got a bit more
Yeah, he did really
recognition.
well though, didn't he?
Yeah, really well. So he was great. I loved watching Sadio Mane before he went off to Liverpool, he was with us, and I think he still holds the record for the fastest ever Premier League hat trick whilst he was with us against Villa, I think. And he did it in like 2 minutes 50 or something like that. It was
I vaguely
absolutely
remember that.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so him as well, and Graziano Pella, all from the same era as well. And I've always also had a soft spot for Adam Lallana too, although he hasn't covered himself in too much glory coming back, but he's older and he's more of a coach.
I remember
or
Pella
assistant
being
coach now.
terrible at FPL. Every time I bought him, he stunk my team out.
Yeah.
Of course, but
Yeah, he was never much good in FPL, but he was very good for us.
I'm
Very
guessing,
happy with
I'm
him.
guessing he must be before your time, but my favourite has to be Letizia. I mean, amazing. Just like
Magic.
what if anyone watching doesn't know Matt Letizia, Google YouTube of his best goals. It's like it's amazing to watch. My favourite one was actually, I'll ask you what your favourite one. It was actually against Newcastle, the team I support, when he sort of picks up at the halfway line and kind of like flicks it over someone's head, flicks it over another
That's
person,
the one.
and then like half volleys it in. That's like my favourite one. Is that yours as well?
I would say it's either that or the free kick where he like flicks it up off the spot and then just levers it on the volley from a free kick, which is just outrageous. Like, when has anyone ever tried
You know what
to do
I thought?
that?
Why did he never try to do that again?
Yeah, I know. Maybe he did and we just didn't see it because there was a lot less televised football back then. So
I mean,
maybe he did it and it just never made any highlights.
I did hear an interview with him fairly recently, actually, where I think he said that they were trying that on the training pitch for like a week, and most of them went off into like row Z. So maybe that's why he never tried it again.
So he thought, good idea, let's try it in a real match, and obviously it works. So fair
enough. So when did you first get into fantasy football, man?
So I'd say my first memories of fantasy football would have been probably around college time, so 16 years old, maybe 17-ish. So well over a decade ago now, although for the first few years, I imagine as quite a lot of people will attest to, is much more casual. It's mini leagues with mates and a bit competitive within that, but never really looking at overall rank or data or anything like that.
Joe said to me in an interview, everyone says that to excuse their poor rank history in the first couple.
Yeah. That's true. Although my rank history, when I was taking it more casually, is I think it holds up pretty well. It was always like middling 200k sort of rank. Obviously, there were less players then, so that's obviously an excuse. But
I'd say my first 3 seasons I wasn't taking that seriously. I think I'm like 200, 300,000 the 3 seasons. It's not that bad. I mean, for a casual player, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what got me into it more as well, was I was tending more often than not to be in the top few in my mini leagues with my mates or at the top, and I got more and more competitive over the years. Like they knew me as someone who loved their football, and I kind of held it over them sometimes. Don't worry, I'll catch you up eventually. I'll beat you in the mini league eventually. But after a few years, when other people start getting a bit more competitive, you look for that edge. So by the time I was out of college at university and then moving into full-time work, because I had a few seasons under my belt playing it casually, and there were a few other people in my mini leagues that were competitive enough and like on my level, I needed that edge. So that's where I kind of fell into the more serious side of FPL, where there was content out there at that time. There wasn't tons, but I found Fantasy Football Scout. I started watching their
17,
streams.
18, something like that.
Yeah, I think it was about that. It was probably maybe a year after, maybe 19, because I seem to remember I got into like really watching the streams, possibly at the back end of the 18-19 season, and then really started taking it seriously 19-20. And the reason I remember that is because I was at Middlesex Cricket at the time, doing the social media and all of their digital marketing there. And there was one person in my team at Middlesex that was really competitive in fantasy football. And so I started diving massively into all of the data and all of the streams and everything just to beat that one person. And then by the end of that season, COVID hit, and obviously it all kind of went nuts. But I was already hooked from that point. I'd created a fantasy football profile on Twitter. Once I'd heard like Joe and I think Mode was on the podcast once or twice talking about their Twitter profiles, I was like, I need to get in on that. Like, it sounds exciting. It sounds like I could be finding quite a lot of fun out of that. So I went into that, and then it was just one of those Pandora's boxes where you open it and you're like, I can't believe this world exists. And I've never looked back since, really. But that was the starting point, I think.
Any particular early memories fantasy football wise stick out?
So the one that I always come back to on this, and I can't remember exactly the order in which it happened, but I'm pretty sure there was a 3-game week stretch about 10 years ago now, maybe like 8 or 9 years ago, where back to back there were 3 hat tricks, and I think the 3 hat tricks were Bale, Sanchez for Arsenal, and then Walcott. And I can't remember the exact order, but I remember buying the player that got the hat trick and captaining them week after week after week for each other.
That's pretty special.
I need to double check exactly what order that happened in, but I'm pretty confident there was a haul for each of them week after week. It was around game week 2021-ish. And maybe it's just my memory playing tricks on me, but that's my favourite.
It sounds like you suddenly developed like some fortune telling abilities to get that.
Oh, it was complete luck. There was no other way of calling it, but I do need to double check exactly the order in which that happened. So if I tell that story any more times and people fact check it, then they might be able to prove me wrong. But that's the way I remember it anyway. It was very close in succession, and there were back-to-back hat tricks.
Yelena came on the channel. Like Yelena came on my own channel to interview me because I needed to fill in a video one week, and in the same video I said in the first season I triple captained Lukaku, Sanchez and Aguero, which is obviously physically impossible. No one's fact checked that. I will, for any keen listeners to the podcast, it was actually Lukaku, which was the one that sucked. I think I just captained the other two. But okay, mate. So you're playing fantasy football, you're enjoying it, and so for anyone who's not aware, Sam has his own YouTube channel, also is a co-host of Who Got the Assist. So I'm not sure which one. I kind of just let whoever I'm talking to ramble on here. I don't know which one came first. Basically, the question is, how did you get into being a content creator, and what inspired this?
Yeah, sure. So it's a funny story, actually, because it doesn't start with either of those two things. It starts with a small company called Playmaker. Now, it might not have been something you ever noticed yourself, but Playmaker were a small app on your mobile phone that became a portal for fantasy football. And it was all FPL still. So the whole app was based around Fantasy Premier League, but it became a community, much like Twitter is today.
What do you mean by portal, mate?
So it was an app on your phone. You open it up and you've basically got a live chat room talking about Fantasy Premier League, but it also had like all of the data and the live scores, the same way that the Fantasy Football Scout or FPL or Fantasy Football Hub even has that now. It was an early version of that, which also had like a live chat room. And the creator, Neil Murray, who used to be called Ronaldinho on Twitter, sent out a message just after COVID hit saying, we're looking for a social media manager. And so I just got in touch straight away. Look, I've got this handle. I'm on Twitter. I love my fantasy football. Maybe we should have a chat. And so all of a sudden, within a few months, I started up working for Playmaker, became their community manager, I guess, and also their social media guy.
So what did you do at university? Like what led into you being because I've had a few people that have done that job, but like what? I suppose you must have been qualified for it in some way to actually get it as a proper job.
Yeah, I guess you could say so. So I did business and marketing at university, which is what everyone says when they don't know exactly what they want to do. But I always had a keen interest in like building my own company, doing something like that. So I wanted to lean into that. And out the back of that, when I first got my first professional roles in the real world, as the young guy in a team, obviously that 19, 20, 21-year-old, going into Middlesex cricket, which was my first proper role in the marketing space.
After university,
it was full of. Sorry, what was that?
Was that straight out of uni? Was it?
It was 1 year. I think I had one other job between that, and it was like an email marketing job, which tied me over for a bit. But as soon as Middlesex Cricket's job became available, I was like, right, I'm diving on that. And as the youngest guy in the team by quite some margin, they were like, okay, we'll just throw all of the online stuff at you. So I did all the digital marketing, all the social media channels. So I was the admin posting like what the scores were, like what the results were on the Twitter and all of that, and got all the abuse when Middlesex lost, which was a lot at that time. And so got used to it from that, and obviously had a bit of a digital marketing background. I built my own blog and website before that to like get the role in the first place, all around sports marketing. And then Middlesex took a chance on me, stayed there for about 2.5, 3 years until COVID hit, and then moved over to Playmaker after that.
Okay. So, yeah. So how does that then... so you're kind of like content creating from a marketing perspective. So how does that come into, I don't know, talking about FPL on podcasts and YouTube?
Yeah, so once I'd taken the Playmaker job and I was like doing their social media stuff and their marketing, it became clear really quickly that any chat or any application or any like movement business within the fantasy football space needed a content generation. Like it couldn't market itself if it didn't have like a YouTube channel or a Spotify or just something producing content for the app. So we were a small team. I think we had mostly developers, then the 2 creators, and then myself. And I was like, I'll give it a crack. Like I'll create a YouTube channel and I'll put up some videos and see if it works. So I started making YouTube videos and podcasts for Playmaker a few years ago now. When I first got that job, they were terrible. Like if I look back, they're awful. But that's how I got started.
FPL specific ones.
Yes. Oh. Yeah. So it was all around FPL, the same way you'd see like a Fantasy Football Scout or Fantasy Football Hub do like on their channels. It was very similar sort of style, using Playmaker graphics and Playmaker data, which I think was StatsBomb, but it was like professional data, like Opta sort of data. But I would do it all off of that and just narrate it myself. Basically, it was very low end. It wasn't great content, and I was a very nervous host to begin with. But you get used to it after a while, and you become more natural, I guess, after a season of making it.
And are you still working for them, or I know you left your job recently. Was that from there?
Yeah, so Playmaker, unfortunately, they were like a startup VC funded firm, and they unfortunately ran out of money a couple of years back. So I then had to like take a more serious job after that, unfortunately. So I've done the social media and the marketing for a couple of podcasts in the business space since. So I've been doing video editing for them and doing all of the marketing for those kind of companies since. So still in terms of content creation, but more behind the camera rather than actually being the one hosting. And obviously during that time, which I'm sure we'll come on to, I've started creating my own fantasy football stuff because I wanted to scratch that itch, basically.
So I'm guessing that's when the company shuts down. Is that right? And so
yeah, Playmaker got bought out, I think, by Scout. I'm not sure they were able to do much with it, but yeah, they bought the platform from Playmaker. So Scout bought it, I think, at the back end of the 2022 season, something like that. So it was around for a good couple of years. It was doing really well. It just unfortunately didn't get picked up by any venture capitalists, so they ran out of funding, which was a shame because I really enjoyed working with them. It was great fun.
You know what? This is a complete tangent, but something I'd never have done if I wasn't an FPL content creator. I'm hoping to get Mark Southerns. I've been texting Mark Southerns about getting him on here in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. So hopefully this didn't put him off. I actually looked up Fantasy Football Scouts. You know, you can get all the online accounts. And
oh yeah, the company's house stuff. Yeah.
It's really weird reading it from because you don't think I think because
you don't see it as a business, right?
You don't,
Yeah,
because it's like pleasure, isn't it? Because you
yeah,
but you know, it's a company the same as any other. So like, I suppose they do
exactly.
mergers and acquisitions and all that stuff as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a great company at the end of the day. I've got no affiliation with them, but like what they've done over the last 10 years or so in fantasy football has been pretty crazy. They've
Definitely,
done
yeah.
some really good stuff.
So what started them? Did you start your own videos first, or did Tom pick you up off of Tom of who got the assist we're talking about here? Did he talent spot you?
Well, I remember I was always like a really dedicated listener to WGTA, so I'd like talk to him a lot on Twitter and respond to a lot of his posts and just say how great the shows were. So after a while, I think he saw me doing Playmaker stuff once or twice. I think we might have had him on as a guest once
Okay.
on the Playmaker channel. And so from that, once or twice when they needed a spare person, I'd come on and do a guest spot for WGTA a couple of seasons back. And then when Lucy, who again, Southampton fan and fantastic podcast co-host for WGTA, she unfortunately had to back out of being Tom's co-host. I think Tom was like umming and ahhing as to who to go with and eventually went with me over that summer. And
Wasn't
he
she
didn't know that at the time,
I
but
think,
I was also building content for my own channel at that moment
was
to
he
go
also a
live.
Southampton fan? Because I'm sure he mentioned to me that one of his co-hosts was. That's quite a coincidence, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Yeah. We he can only have Southampton fans on the pod now. I think it must be something about losing every week. Yeah.
Sorry about interrupting you.
No, not at all. No. So what I was saying was during that summer when Tom messaged me to ask me to be co-host, I'd already also started setting up my own channel. So they kind of happened simultaneously.
So is this the
And I
start of
decided
23-24?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Start of last season. Yeah. So start of 23-24. I remember I was on holiday in Spain and I just set up all the graphics and I like bought all the equipment and stuff that you see now in front of you ready to go live with my channel. And Tom messaged me saying, "Oh, would you be up for co-hosting?" And I was like, "Yeah, great. I'll do both. That can't possibly take up too much of my time." And it's been quite an undertaking ever since. But really, really enjoyable. And I wouldn't change it for the world. It's been great fun.
Yeah, so actually, I think maybe we'll save talking about talking about your own YouTube channel for a bit, because I've got a whole section where I ask about you know, how to become a content creator. Basically, I'm going to ask your opinion on that. But just to be on who got the assists for the minute. So first of all, I might as well plug Tom's video here. Tom has been on this interview series back in December. So please do check that out if you haven't seen it yet, to the viewers. Yeah, so the first question I'd noted down was obviously who got the assist. I mean, it's not the original podcast, but it's not far off being. I mean, it's up there with the longest running podcast. Did you feel pressured joining such something that's been going on for so long?
I did a bit to start with. I remember the first time they asked me on as a guest, in particular, I was a bit overwhelmed. And I think if you go back and watch or listen to the recording, I'm a little bit nervous with my answers for the first like few minutes,
So you
but
were a guest on there?
it's such a nice chat. Yeah, I was a guest to begin with. And then it's just such a nice chat, and he's such an easy guy to get along with. And so were the other people on the show at the time. Lucy, I think Nick once or twice came on as well and had a chat with me.
I loved
relaxed.
I loved interviewing him as well, because he's the only other person who smokes and vapes while he's recording, which makes me not look like an antisocial weirdo, which I obviously am anyway.
Yeah, he had one or two comments on that on the live stream, I think, when he was smoking during, saying it's like you're blowing smoke in our faces. But outside of that, it's not been too bad. Yeah, I did notice that he's kind of stopped doing that recently.
Okay.
I'm not sure whether that's because of the comments, but yeah, he seems to be maybe not doing it quite so often. But yeah, he's very easy to get along with. And when you're like recording with him, a bit like this chat right now, you kind of forget that you're even being filmed. So after 5 or 10 minutes, I was nervous to begin with, but you forget that you're on even WGTA in the first place once you relax into it and you just start talking about FPL. But yeah, I did feel the pressure when I was first invited on, especially when he wanted me to become a co-host, I thought that's quite an undertaking, and I've got to do it justice. So I always try and come into the show fully prepared with some well-researched answers, because I don't want to leave the viewers who've been listening for like 10 years now feeling like he's done a bit of a half-assed job. I want to do it justice.
Well, I know Tom said when I interviewed him, you've added a lot to the podcast in terms of the visuals and bringing it onto YouTube and stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the system was before I got there, but I remember when I first joined, we switched over to like a streaming software, StreamYard, which I know you're using as well, and that seemed to help. And then we kind of upgraded the YouTube slowly over time. The graphics were like an easy win because I was already doing them for my own channel as well. So yeah, I guess maybe that's the only reason he picked me in the first place. I don't know. But yeah, like it's always nice to hear that he thinks that it's going in the right direction. But yeah, I'll always take it on the chin if he doesn't like something I've made or something. So we can always change it.
So another thing I had noticed, Dan, is I remember when Tom came on, he told me it was a bit like going through a really unsuccessful guy in the romantic world's love life, in terms of him telling me about all the, you know, like someone tells you, oh, I had this girlfriend and this happened, and then I had this other girlfriend. But I'm talking about co-hosts of his podcast.
Yeah.
So you're like number 6 or 7, I think would be. Will you be hanging around for a while, Sam, or are you going to break Tom's heart again?
I know. I think I will be hanging around. At least I hope so. I don't know if he's killing them off in the background or something, but yeah, I've really enjoyed it. This is my second season, so there was a little run where each co-host only lasted a year. So I think Lucy did a year. I think before that, I think Harry did a few months, and there were a few others that might have only done a few months at a time as well, whilst he was looking for a more permanent solution. But I'll complete my second season for a start for sure, and then as long as he'll have me, I'm more than happy to keep going as long as he'll be happy with me on the show. So yeah, here's to 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons plus of Sam and Tom teaming up and giving some average FPL advice.
Yeah, I'll just shout FPL Harry out here because he's one of the few people who I've not had any contact with. Harry, would love to have you on here. One of the things I'd written down was obviously Harry's massive now. You know, he's like one of the biggest guys out there. I'm guessing the dream is to become the next Harry.
Yeah, I suppose it would be nice to have that kind of volume of people watching the channel, where that being like my personal channel, of course. I don't want to ever like get ahead of myself and think that is going to become my full-time thing, because it only happens to a rare few. Like, there are so many of us out there now that are creating content.
Yeah, it's got like the best rank history ever that sort of helps as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, you've got to have a thing, and Harry's thing is being absolutely elite at this game, which massively helps. There are obviously loads of content creators out there with good rank histories. Mine's okay. It's not as good as Harry's by any means, but they stand out with other things. So Ross, obviously, you've just had on the show, had the psychological angle to begin with. You've got other specific ones like Focal, who goes really into the graphic side of it, pulls together a really tight 10-minute video that's very high end. And so everyone's got their thing. And I think if I'm going to really explode, I need to figure out what that thing is. And I don't know if I've really truly found that yet. At the moment, I'm just creating content that I enjoy making, and it ends up being naturally a little bit longer because I do natter on, and I do like giving both sides of the argument.
Where would you put yourself on? I mean, I think in that interview with Ros, which I know you said you've watched recently, we sort of say there's like the focal level in terms of length, and then there's, I don't know, I suppose Raptors up here and Focal's down there. Where would you say you are on that scale of length?
I'm probably like one step below Ross. Like, his videos, not always, but quite often go 30 to 45 minutes. Mine are more often between 25 and 35. So I don't think, I think I've done 1 or 2 videos ever outside of live streams that were like 40 minutes. Most of them are around 25, 35.
Like, let's talk FPL sort of level then.
Yeah, I think Andy's a little bit shorter than mine. I need to work on being more concise and succinct with my points, because Andy's been successful for a reason, because he's very good at conveying that information quickly and giving opinions without necessarily putting down others. Whereas I think at the moment my one flaw is that maybe I try to appeal to everyone or try to accept that everyone's viewpoint matters. And although that is always going to be the case, I probably do need to put more of a line in the sand as to like, no, this is what I think, and this is why you're subscribed to me. So that's one thing that I need to work on, I think, to be a bit more succinct with my point and like really draw a line as to this is what I believe and I'm going to stick to it. Where, yeah, that's probably my weakness at the moment, and why I natter on a little bit too much, just trying to make everyone happy.
So next question I have that I usually ask is, what were your early experiences of content creation like? I guess going back to the app you were working for, and how have those experiences changed over time? And that could be in terms of personal experiences, in terms of the videos, in terms of the, you know, FPL was a content creation space, anything along those lines.
Yeah, I suppose when I started, I felt a bit more freedom. And I think this is something that a lot of content creators will talk about on this show, that when you first get up and running, you feel like there's not that much pressure on you because firstly, not many people are watching, but also you're trying to create that personality or trying to convey that personality to your viewers. So you might be more willing to go for a 1 week punt that not many others will talk about, or you might be willing to go with a slightly different strategy. Whereas over time, especially now that I've got my own name to it rather than the Playmaker name, I do start to feel a little bit more pressure to maybe not necessarily go template, but really give logical reasoning behind what I'm saying and what I'm doing. And I think that pushes me more towards template.
Would you have, I may have misheard that, would you have particularly gone out and made particular decisions then to be, I don't know, not controversial, but to be different when you first started? Or maybe
no, and I know some people have done that and have been successful with that, and I've not really got anything against that. But more what I meant was that when I first started, I felt more free to be myself. And if I had a gut feeling, I think that's the best way of phrasing it. It's like if I had a gut feeling on a player, I would do it without really thinking about the consequences it could have on like the hate I would get if it went wrong, or people questioning the decision.
You didn't care so much about how it was perceived, how you were doing and stuff. Is that what?
Yeah, I think so. And I think generally as well, content creation across the whole of YouTube and the whole of Twitter and anywhere you could consume it has maybe fallen victim to that a little bit over the last few years, because there's just so many options out there, and it is now a race to the top. Like the best content creators are the ones that have the best ranks, and also are the ones that can stand by their decisions the most comfortably. Whereas some people might have success one season by going for a load of off the wall picks and gut calls, let's say, but the next season they might fall victim to the fact that that was just a bit of variance. And if you're not making content, or if you're very early in the trajectory of making content, people just don't mind if you make those off the wall picks, because they're going to forget it was you in the first place that did it, or forget all about it the next week. Whereas, I mean, I've not got a big base of subscribers. I've got just over 3,000 at the moment, but I've got the regulars, and I've got people that I feel like I'd be letting down if I told them to do one thing based on really good, like strong arguments based on data and logic and all this fact finding I do to create a good show for them. And then I go completely off on a tangent and do something wild and different and not really explain why that is. So I need to find that balance where I've still got that freedom to say, basically do as I say, but not necessarily as I do, because I'm playing the game for my own fun at the end of the day as well. And although this might be statistically not the best thing to be doing, I've got a gut feeling on it, and I want to be able to back that up in my videos as well.
Not to go off too much into a tangent, but do you know the guy who's world number one at the moment? I'm not sure of his name. He's
FPL Northern, isn't it?
I know, because I know he was. I mean, I don't blame him at all for doing this, but I know he's really been Mr. Billy Big Bollocks on Twitter in terms of putting himself up, and I think he went on.
Oh, I would be too.
I would be too. He went on 606, so he's obviously. I'm just thinking, like, he obviously wants a bit of the fame. He if he wanted to start a YouTube channel now, can you imagine how many viewers he'd be getting? Like,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Oh, he would have loads of success, and I've noticed a lot of other channels at the moment have been interviewing him on their channels and been using that as like the hook, like we're interviewing the world number one.
And FPL North,
one interesting
if you do want to come on to FPL, have a beer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I don't do interviews on FPL Pricey, but if you're ever free, I'm more than willing to as well.
I did actually DM him, but I think Gianni may have slightly trumped FPL have a beer in terms of presence in the community so far. But maybe one day you'll
get there. You'll get there for sure. For sure.
Sorry, mate. Sorry, I cut you off. You were saying.
Oh, no, I was just saying there's one good example of that exact thing happening and working in a content creator's favor, and that's Focal. A couple of years ago, or a few years ago now, when he was first starting up, he got to world number one quite early on, and he hung on to it for a little while, and that massively benefited the rise of his channel. And I remember him going from I think it was 5 or 10k up to 30 or 40 really, really fast off the back of that. And obviously the quality of the channel being really high as well helped. But just having that little leg up of, I've got a really great rank all of a sudden, it does really help you. So if you've got that behind you and the quality of the content's good as well, it's the perfect algorithm for success. So
I think it's the same. I mean, I may be misspeaking here because I was, as an FPL nerd, I was following Mate and Raptor pretty early on in their channels, but I think their channels both got massive boosts, not from being number one in the world, but I think they both were in the top couple of hundred, and
they had really good ranks at one point.
Yeah, and that really boosted their channels. Sorry, mate. So I was asking. So, are there any other sort of things that have changed over time apart from being worried about your rank?
Yeah, I am definitely more worried about my rank. I think generally across the community, there's now more fixation on rank as well. I don't think that ever really used to be the case where people would see it as a point of authority if you've got a great rank history. Every now and then, especially during an international break, you'll now see the posts just reminding people of their rank history if they've had really good ones, obviously. And it is now more prevalent than ever, showing that off as a source of you should listen to me.
I think it's always been maybe in terms of the content creation, it's always been a thing though. I'm sure how many.
It's definitely been a thing, but I've noticed it more now. Where you'll kind of see little fights on Twitter over it, your rank history's fake or all of this. Yeah, I've seen a few in this season in particular. I've seen quite a few where there's a lot of fixation over what your rank is right now. Are you having a good season, and therefore are you a good content creator? But then also, what is it previously, and should we be listening to you in the first place?
I know you've been on FPL Juice, haven't you? I'm not quite.
No, I haven't. I haven't. I'm still waiting for the invite. Yeah.
Even I've been on there. They'll have anyone, mate. No, but they've got a kind of a running joke. I think that Ash bought his brother's team so he could have a top 10k finish. Whether or not it's true, I don't know.
That would be nice.
Yeah. Have you had a top 10k finish?
No, I'm very consistent top 100. I think 5 out of the last 6 seasons top 100, and just outside in the one I missed, and that was last season. But no, never top 10k. No, I got to about 1,500th at one point and then fell away one season and ended up 30k, which was very disappointing. But no, consistently good, but not consistently great, unfortunately.
I was 3k last year. Actually, this is another bit of a random tangent. I was 3k last year and 10k the season before, but the highest I've ever been. I have been in the top 200.
Wow.
It was maybe my 3rd season of playing. It actually was the season that I got my worst ever rank. But I was.
How's that work?
I don't know. I think it was a season like Alonso, Trent.
Big at the back.
Yeah, Mendy. I think I had Edison as well when he got an assist, and it was brilliant. I should have started an FPL channel then.
Yeah. You'd have been flying straight out the gate. That would have been amazing. Top 200. That's perfect. That's what you want.
There's actually a clip. Do you remember FPL Wildcats?
Wildcats? No, it doesn't ring a bell. Sorry.
It's quite long. In Freya. some other people whose names escape me, and I was top of their mini league, and they actually they read out my team. It was called I Hate Harry Kane, and I got so excited because I was being talked about on YouTube for 5 minutes. And I actually got that clip on YouTube. Maybe sometime I'll dig it out and do something with it on the channel.
Yeah, it'll be somewhere.
So what would you say are the positives and the negatives of being an FPL content creator, Sam? Perhaps starting with the positives.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a big one yet, so I'm not really getting any of the recognition on the street that I've heard Ross talk about, and any of that. Maybe one day that would be lovely, but
getting recognised 7 times a night or something, he said. I didn't say it during his interview, but I reckon he may have been over exaggerating slightly there.
I don't know. He's pretty big. It depends where. So if he's at a football match, then yeah, I definitely could see that. It depends. And also, to be fair, if he's at an FPL meetup, then definitely. So it depends where you are, I guess. So there are caveats.
I mean, to be fair, he did say it was because he's very recognisable. What did he say?
Yeah.
Picture thingy, Bob. But yeah, sorry, I was only joking. I'm just yeah.
No, I suppose that would be a positive one day to just have a little bit of that, but I wouldn't really want a lot of it. I feel like that's never going to really happen anyway. If you're an FPL creator, you've got an upper limit of where you can get to. But I have just really enjoyed interacting with people, sharing those opinions in the comments and getting nice feedback, but also the constructive criticism as well has been really great to hear. And over the last year and a half, building it from zero, the moments that have meant the most to me and have been the most heartwarming haven't been when I've had a really good game week. It's been when I've gotten a really good bit of feedback on a video and someone said something really kind or pushed my content on Twitter without me asking for it to be pushed. And those moments have been just so rewarding, and I wouldn't trade that for the world. So whilst obviously it's great getting a few views here or there, I've had 1 or 2 videos that have gotten a few thousand. I had one recently on the assistant manager chip.
Don't talk about that too much. I've got some specific questions about that when we come to
nice.
discussing tips for FPL content. Sorry, mate, go ahead.
Lovely. Yeah, no, sounds great. But yeah, one or 2 videos have gone a bit bigger, which obviously is a nice moment. But the best moments genuinely have been the in-person interactions, because I go to a lot of the FPL meetups in London, and when people come up to me and say, "Oh, I know who you are," or I loved your video on this the other day. Sometimes when I disagreed with you on that video the other day, I like that just as much, because it at least means that they're interested in it and they found something to chat about with me. And I just love talking about FPL with people, and my channel is just a great excuse to have those interactions more often than I would get out in the wild. So yeah, that's the main positive for me, and the community that FPL has built over the last 5, 6, 7 years, starting with Playmaker as well. I felt that love quite a lot because there was a really lovely community on there, but also just on Twitter, now on Blue Sky a little bit as well, and in the YouTube comments too. That's the best thing, I think, is just those real life interactions with other people who just share a hobby with you and just want to talk about that hobby. And they might have different insights or different opinions, but at the end of the day, we're all talking about something we just love chatting about, and that's great.
A random one, I don't know why, but I was going through, I don't think I've ever mentioned him on the channel before, Alf FPL, whose content I love, and I watched a video where he was at the, I think he was at the, what do you call it, the big one?
The start of season meetup on FPL. Fest.
Yeah, and he was going around interviewing people, and I saw you in there with Az and a load of random people I've never seen before.
There were loads of us there that day. That was a great one. Have you ever been to one of the meetups?
No, I've not, mate. I'm planning to hopefully go next year. Roberto, do you know Roberto FPL Yellow Arm?
Yeah. I'm actually going on his show on Sunday or Monday even next week. So I'm doing the tour.
Yeah, I was on there last week. So I think he's literally getting. He's had Sam and. I think he must be scraping the barrel if we're where he's got to now. Yeah, but I'm hoping.
Yeah, I think so.
Hoping to go with him next year. So, any other positive?
Yeah.
Any other positives, mate?
Oh, I'm sure there are plenty. I mean, I've been so obsessed with the data side of football for so long now that it feels very natural to me to be looking at football in that way, where I see a shot being taken from the edge of the box. I'm like, that's a zero point 0.1 or that's a zero point 0.2 or something like that. And it was just so endearing and so lovely to find a space where people see football in the same way as I do and analyze it in the same way. And even if you're a grass-led manager rather than a data-led manager, we still look at football in analytical terms when you're actually physically watching the game. So that's something just so lovely and heartwarming that there's just I'm not alone in the world as this nerd that just loves seeing that side of it. There's a whole big mess of us out there that all get along, and we all, again, we might have different opinions, but we see football in a similar lens or under a similar lens. So that's great. The people I've met in the content creator space as well, including yourself, but the other, like even larger ones like Ross has been so supportive of my channel and always giving advice and or giving me a random shout out here or there as well. The general level of like support of other creators in the space is really lovely. I went to, I got nominated for the Fancy Content Awards at the end of last year, and I was nowhere near winning or anything like that. But the people that went, and I think Focal won, Oscar won, and there are a few other little awards going on through the night, and it was just such a lovely event seeing all of those people who just create videos based on something we all love, being really rewarded for it. And again, just an excuse to have a few drinks and chat about something we love doing. And I know we've got like this section on mental health coming later on, but again, FPL sometimes can be an escape from real life, like when it's going well, especially, but it is something to be enjoyed, and it is a bit of an escape. So it's nice to sharing that escape with other people who are like-minded and not take it too seriously at times, which is something I struggle with, but try not to take it too seriously and appreciate the fact that this is a privilege to be able to enjoy something like this, even if the season's not going well. We're watching football, we're getting points from it, and we're talking to our mates about different things going on. So that's great. That's what we love to do.
I had a question in here about that actually. So you were on FPL therapy, weren't you? I was gonna ask you about that. You may have noticed in the Raptor interview, I sort of.
Yeah, you were getting yourself on there.
I got him called. He did promise at the end that he would have me on.
He did.
Said, stop, Roz. Stop getting. Who did he have on this week? Neil Robinson. Nobody wants to watch the world snooker champion. They want FPL have a beer. But anyway, I'm just going to ask.
You're going to have to bring a crate with you, I think. there was one or two shows where they've had a couple of beers on the show, so you're going to have to bring a crate with you.
I was going to ask, what was that like? And did that help the, like, I don't know, subscriber numbers and stuff like that on the channel?
Yeah, for sure. So for a starting point, yeah, it did boost my subscribers. It was right at the start of the season as well. So when content is being most consumed by the masses too. So it was really kind of him. I think I was one of the first non-massive ones that went on. I think it was Harry, Oscar, and then possibly me, third or fourth. I think Fran was around the same sort of time as me.
That's really early.
Really early on. So it's super kind of Ross to invite me on so early. Massively privileged. And just a little heads up for you, I think I'm going to be on again pretty soon as well, in the next few weeks. So I don't know whether this goes out before or after that, but there might be a second FPL Pricey episode on therapy soon too.
Would you be the first person to go on twice? That's a bit of an.
No, I think he's had Oscar and Ross or Oscar and Harry on twice each because they went on as a pair. So I think they've both been on twice. I don't know if anyone else is going to do the rounds before me. But yeah, it might be because I'm freelance now and I've got more time on my hands. And I did notice he messaged me straight after I said I'm taking the plunge and going freelance. So maybe he realised, oh, he'll be easy to get hold of. So that's probably why. But I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm a bit upset, Ross. I'm a bit upset, Ross. If you're watching, you do know that FPL beer is free all the time. So.
Especially if you do bring some beers with you.
So what about the negatives, mate, of being an FPL content creator?
Yeah, so I think touched on it a little bit earlier on, where I think before I became someone posting videos and talking about my team all the time, I felt that sense of freedom where if I wanted to do something a bit off the wall, even if it was like ill-advised, I felt the freedom to do so without having to maybe like prove logically why I think that's a good decision. Whereas now, anything I do, I know that next week I'm going to have to talk about why I did it. So I need to be able to kind of show them or show anyone watching why, like what logic I fell down on to like actually bring in X player. The other thing that I feel a little bit more pressure on that I didn't expect necessarily is changing my mind. So I record usually on a Sunday, so straight like going into the Monday morning, but then also my team selection is on like either a Wednesday night or a Thursday morning. I will record it. So it has enough time to get a few views before we actually hit the deadline, and people can actually watch it before we hit the deadline. So this week, as an example, is a Friday deadline. I'm going to have to record first thing tomorrow morning, straight after the Villa-Liverpool game the night before. And in that video, I'm going to have to try and come to a decision on generally what I want my team to be for the week ahead, when I've still got another 24, 48 hours before actually locking in my team. So I could change my mind. So I feel a bit of pressure now to kind of make my mind up early on limited information, knowing that stuff can happen. There could be team news, there could be a leak, there could be data that I just learn about like after recording that I want to change my mind on. And I don't want to feel like I'm cheating my audience or telling them something that I'm not actually doing because I've recorded early. So that's the thing I'm struggling with. And I think that's solved more easily if I start doing deadline streams, because at least it gives people the opportunity to see where I'm at going into the actual deadline. So I'm looking at doing those a bit more often now that I'm freelance. But at the moment, that's probably the negative right now, is that pressure I feel. And it's mainly like self-inflicted. I never really get complaints saying, oh, you recommended this player, but you went with another player.
I know,
but the bigger you get, the more that's going to happen, right?
I know a lot of people complain about Mark Southerns, again, not meaning to carry out, but that he will not necessarily do follow-up on... I mean, in the interview with Az, which you wouldn't have seen because it hasn't come out yet, you know, he gets a bit of stick for saying one thing on Black Box, basically, and then doing something different. But you need to... I mean, the cogs are turning... In the FPL world, our cogs are turning. I mean, on the usual game week, they start turning Sunday night, don't they? And then they don't stop until Friday night, Saturday morning. I mean, we're in a... should probably say we're recording this just before Villa and Liverpool playing game week 25. This is when we're recording this. So it's a bit of a tight turnaround this week. But you do, don't you? Your mind is constantly evolving in terms of what transfers you're going to make and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the more time you've got during the week to research those things, your mind will change as well. And I actually, as a good example, just before coming on today, I had half an hour spare whilst you were like setting up the show, and I found a route that I really like over the next few game weeks that I hadn't thought of before. And it's not in my transfer plans from the Tuesday recording that I did. So I'm going to have to not correct myself, but like kind of explain why I'm now thinking this rather than what I was talking about in the previous video. And I think generally speaking, all FPL content that's created is automatically dated every time something changes, and things change constantly. We've got midweek fixtures all the time. We've got Champions League. We've got press conferences. We've got double game weeks being dropped in at the last minute that everyone needs to drop everything they're doing and change their strategy on the night before the deadline. So all of these things change so quickly, and I'd never want to feel like I'm giving false information or not being authentic with my moves. But everything I've ever recorded has always been the full truth. It's just things do change after you record, and Black Box is a great example. So would WGTA as well, by the way, of a show that's recorded fairly early in the week sometimes, and it leaves you open to a lot of things changing between the time the show is recorded and the time that you lock in your team. That Mark, obviously, it's a big channel. He's a really, really knowledgeable FPL player. He will be reacting to those things the same way as Tom or myself or Az will after they've recorded the show. So yeah, that can be frustrating, but what I will say of the community is it's very rare, if ever, that I've ever personally got a complaint that I've changed my opinion on something. Maybe it's just because I always in my show say, look, I'm not locked in right now, things can change, but do watch out and I'll post my team before the deadline to show you what I'm doing. But you shouldn't feel like you have to do that for people to understand that things do change. And I
think
am
it's more
wary
people,
of that.
I'm not sure it's a complaint. It's more just people moaning.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Complaint is probably a strong term. Yeah. Unless you're like the size of like an Andy or a Ross or an Oscar or a Harry, where I know for a fact that they do get like real complaints if they're for whatever reason not able to do a deadline stream and they do something different. That can be a problem for them, but that's because they've got hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and you're always going to get one or two bad eggs that are actually, quite frankly, just logging in to physically copy their team because they've got a lot of copycats.
In which case,
really mind.
Yeah, in which case I'm glad they didn't do the deadline stream.
Yeah,
whatever.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Like, we need to get rid of those copycats, like, because at the end of the day, they're not actually playing the game, are they? They're just literally taking Harry's team or Oscar's team or whatever. So yeah, I mean, those are few and far between. That would be a negative, but it's more the self-inflicted negative of I don't want to let those people down and make them feel like I am cheating them in a way and giving them false information or a false or an inauthentic opinion when actually my opinions just change through the week. So yeah, the content gets dated so quickly, and I do feel pressure to like create something new quite quickly after the last video if anything changes whatsoever. And because I'm not a full-time creator, as I know you'll attest to as well, it's quite difficult to just find the time to start a video, like do all the research, do the graphics, do the recording, do the editing, get it posted, if you're busy with work or with life last minute. So yeah, that's probably where I struggle the most at the moment, but I do try my best to avoid that.
Unless it's your full-time job, other things.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't do at the minute. I mean, I'm going to start streaming next season, like doing a regular stream, but I don't do like, team reveals or anything like that. But still, just even finding time to record like one or two of these a week. I mean, your work has to take priority if that's what you're being paid for, and then FPL, which I guess is what gives content creators who do it for a living a bit of a, I don't want to say advantage. Well, yeah, advantage in terms because they can react maybe more quickly, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I think that reaction time is essential as well for becoming a bigger content creator. Like being able to, like I noticed the other day, whilst I was busy at work, obviously, I think it was last Friday, the double game week for 32 was announced for Newcastle and Palace.
Really
and within half an hour.
That was so last minute, wasn't it?
It was so last minute. And I was busy at work, and it was like Friday afternoon, so I still had half a day's worth of work to do. And I was like, well, maybe at 5 o'clock I could maybe squeeze like a quick video in, but by that time it's probably too late anyway because there's an hour and a half before the deadline. But before I even checked YouTube, Andy had created an incredible summary within like half an hour of the announcement. And that's the flexibility that going full-time can give you. You can
Ros went live, I think, as well, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So you've got that opportunity to react much quicker and create content that is authentic, that is live, and to that exact moment relevant. And the problem that I currently have is, well, 9 to 5, I've got to do my work usually. I mean, sometimes I can maybe be a bit more flexible, but it's never going to be anywhere near those guys until I make the money that I can do it full time. And that's just a pipe dream at this point. That's miles and miles away. So for now, it's going to have to be more researched stuff that's not quite as live, but hopefully stays relevant for as long as possible.
Any other negatives?
Any other negatives? I have noticed my rank isn't as good in the last 2 years. I had better ranks. I had better ranks before I was a creator. And it might be just playing without that pressure, I think, where I every now and then I feel like because I've been watching football for so long, I've got quite a strong gut with football, and I've stopped relying on that gut a little bit more often now. whilst I've been making content for the reasons I've already given. But I do miss that. I liked going with the gut. And when you pull off something that you've done on a gut call that works in FPL, it's one of the best feelings that you can possibly have. If you pick a differential captain or pick a 0.5% owned player that no one's talking about, and you bring them in and they haul, there's no better feeling. And that's something that I haven't really had that feeling of since I was a content creator, because it's not because I'm going template for the sake of it. It's because all of my stuff is now really thoroughly researched. So it kind of like extracts all of those punts and those gut feelings, because they're not really based on any research. So I don't then use them anymore. And I need to get back to that a little bit. And it's something that it's definitely a controllable negative, but I do miss those wild, amazing, euphoric feelings of getting a gut feeling right. And that's probably a slight negative.
Okay, sorry to the viewers. We have to take a quick break there. Visual viewers will see that Sam is doing a strip tease for us. He's down to his t-shirt now. Perhaps by the end he'll be shirtless. So next question, and I did want to get your opinion particularly on this one, Sam. So I've got a few sub questions under here. So next thing I generally ask is, I like to think that there might be a few upcoming FPL content creators, either early on in their journey, even earlier than us, or thinking of starting out. What advice would you give to any FPL content creators starting up? Maybe I'll let you answer that generally, and then I'll pick up on some of the specific questions I've got written down as we go on.
Perfect. Yeah, sounds good. So the two main things that I'd really focus on, first of all, is even if you think you're going to be terrible to begin with, and in large cases, it might be correct, I was terrible to begin with, but just get started. Genuinely, just start making the content. You will feel awkward and unnatural to begin with. God knows I did. And I'm sure anyone who comes on here and talks about their starting point for YouTube will feel the same way when they first begin. It's really weird talking directly at a camera at times. It's weird hearing yourself talk when you're editing it, and like listening back, you think, oh, what the hell was I talking about? But just if you get over that and you just keep going, you stop hearing yourself quite so much. You stop being so critical, and you become more natural over time, much more comfortable in front of a camera. And it's also had like wider life benefits as well, where I'm much happier and more comfortable presenting to a group and talking to friends and all of that as well. So that's really helpful. So just get started, really. Just dive into it. No one's going to watch it to begin with anyway. I hate to say it, but it is true. But it also takes the pressure off that no one's watching it. So you might as well just start up and be your only viewer and analyze what you're doing right and wrong to begin with. And then by the time you get good, you'll start having a few viewers as well along the way. Now, the second point, and probably the most crucial point to date for me, is that consistency. I've seen so many content creators, even since I've started, that have kind of come out of the woodwork and started really well. And then one week they might miss one of their 2 videos. Then the next week they might miss one of their 2. And then the audience doesn't really know what to expect from them. And all of a sudden they might have like a 2-week period where they just don't create anything. And the algorithm forgets about them. Their viewers forget about them and stop relying on them for weekly content. So I think consistency is so massive, and it's not something that you see a benefit from to begin with, but over a 2-3 year, 4 year, maybe average as well, being as consistent as you are will pay dividends, and you'll start to see that snowball effect really picking up, because people look back at your channel and know quite reliably that this guy isn't going anywhere. I can tune into him every single week at this time or for these 3 videos, and I'll always get consistent advice, consistent quality. And also I know the style in which he talks, and hopefully get along with them as a person as well. I know Ross talked about it on your show too. People, like, obviously the rank and the advice that they actually give is important, but also the personality, and you get to know these creators.
You buy into the person as much as anything, don't you?
For sure. And like, I've got to the point now where I honestly couldn't give 2 tosses about like what their rank is at that moment. Like, the people that I listen to regularly are the ones that I like. And yes, there's like this underlying base of okay, they're obviously very good at the game. They know what they're talking about. They wouldn't be creating the content in the first place if they didn't. But the reason I'm listening to them is because I kind of get along with what they're saying. Like, I feel like I'm listening to a friend, and I feel like I can relate to them in some way. And being consistent is very helpful in building that relationship with the audience, where they know you as a person now. Some of them won't like you. That's fine. Like, they just won't listen to you again. Whereas the ones that do will stick around. They'll be loyal. They'll talk in your comments every single time. They'll give you great feedback, whether it's positive or negative, and you'll build that loyalty up over time. But that only ever comes with consistency. So get started, be brave enough to admit that you're bad to begin with, and carry on going anyway, because that's the main thing. Most people stop after 2 or 3, maybe even 10 videos, because they're like, oh, I'm getting no views, I'm rubbish, I'm not feeling comfortable. That's the point in which you push through that wall. You go through that, you charge through it, and that's when you start to see the benefit. And if you're consistent with it, you will start seeing 1 or 2 of your videos picking up, and learning. Once one little trick every week will always help as well. 1% better, 1% better, 1% better.
I had a very strange experience on this channel. That the first video I made got about 4,000 views. It was content creator tier list, and I've not got anywhere near there since then. So I think I'm sort of the opposite to the norm. How would you say? And we're talking about your YouTube channel here, just to obviously differentiate this from who got the assist. How do you try to differentiate yourself in what is quite a congested marketplace? And I'll add on to that, because I know that you've got experience of editing and stuff. And you mentioned earlier on your assistant manager video, which I know you're very proud of, because I'll say me and Sam are in an FPL content creator group where we share lots of things on Twitter. And I know you were very proud of that one. I mean, did you think... Sorry, I'm overloading this question. How do you differentiate yourself? Do you think the editing style is an important part of that?
Yeah, I think so. So the one thing that I thought would differentiate myself when I first started is I've got a background in graphic design and video editing as well. So I thought that that would be a helpful starting point to maybe help my channel stand out a little bit, like some extra work on the thumbnails, some extra work on the graphics within the video itself. But obviously, even in the last 2 years, the average across YouTube content creators, like big or small, the quality has gone way, way up. So I'm not even sure that that's a massive point of differentiation by itself. And what I mean by that is the guy in the corner with the green screen behind, because that's what I do. I've got all of the gear and no idea, and I've got me in the corner, I've got the graphic up on screen, and I just hit record and then switch the graphic, record the second part, and kind of tie them all together. That's generally my process for most videos. But like you said, the one that's gone big for me anyway recently was the assistant manager video, where I sat down one weekend. I was like, right, I need something that's truly going to differentiate myself and prove that I've got the skills as a video editor to help me stand out amongst the market. Because for any of you who don't really know me that well, in my full-time jobs, in my freelance work, I edit content for like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, and I do some quite, like, I guess, relatively high production edits for that. So like with all the transitions and the moving graphics and all of that sort of stuff. I don't do any of that really for my own YouTube, but I thought, well, you know what? I've got a bit of spare time. We've got this really fresh topic that no one really knows much about at the moment, but there's tons to learn about it. I'm going to kind of try and marry the two, go really high end on the video editing, and see if that works out. And I don't know whether it's because of the editing or whether it's because of the topic was very relevant at the time, but it resonated, and it got to like 33,000 views in the end, which for me is 10 times the size of my channel. So that was massive for me. I gained like 500-600 subscribers just off of that one video, which was really, really helpful. And I'm now looking for more of the timeless content like that assistant manager chip video that I can apply that higher end video editing style to, because it's not always going to be relevant to like a team selection the way I do it anyway. For a focal, it's a bit different because he doesn't have himself on the camera. He uses the moving graphics to retain the interest of the audience, whereas with our videos, we've got our own headshots talking away, so there's a bit of visual stimulation there. But with the heavy graphic design ones, obviously it takes a lot longer to edit, so it needs to be a bit more timeless.
Can't stress this, Sam. I don't think you've watched the interview with FPL Nightmare, but he has taught himself basically how to edit, and he spends a ridiculous amount of time. We're talking 20 hours, not just editing, but the whole thing for a 20-minute video. How long, it being like your professional background, how long would you spend on a 20-minute video? Not necessarily the system manager, just generally, how long would you spend editing a video?
Yeah, so the editing side of it, I would say I've got it down to about half an hour to 45 minutes on the edit, because I know my process quite well. I've got all the presets. I've even got like a template file that I kind of lock and load all of my clips into. It took a while to get to that length of time. So for the first 6 months or so, I would say on average, it took me an hour and a half minimum, if not longer. Quite a lot longer sometimes when I'm stumbling through my words and I'm not quite getting my point out well. But now I've got it to a point where I spend a lot more time actually talking to the camera, getting the 5-minute segment correct so that I spend less time doing the editing and I can kind of fly through it, knowing where the cut is going to come and then just mashing from there. Obviously, the assistant manager took a long time, like a lot longer, like a full day of editing to get it right.
Yeah.
And even now I look back at it, I'm like, oh, I could have done this. I could have done that. Like there were bits I would improve. But the process for my general stuff that I put out on a weekly basis, people are after the insight rather than the high-end editing. And the high-end editing will make it more difficult to get the content out on time as well. So I relax my editing style for those videos and just focus on trying to get the point across as best as possible.
So the next one I had, how much do you think being the co-host of Who Got the Assist, how much do you think that's helped you in terms of, I don't know, visibility and in terms of starting up your own YouTube channel?
Yeah, it's definitely been a help. And every now and then on the show, even Tom will kind of shout out a recent bit of content I've done and plug it, which is fantastic. I never ask him to do so. He's just really nice like that. And I guess it's just helped me leverage the name FPL Pricey in the community a little bit more. Obviously, WGTA is such a great, like a huge part of the FPL community and has been for so long that just having my name anywhere near it and being on the show is really helpful to me as a creator. It massively boosts my profile, and I've gained quite a few followers on Twitter. I'm not great on Twitter. I don't post tons, but I've still gained a fair few followers on there, even when it was first announced that I was coming onto the show. And every week since, I gain a few followers from obviously being talked about on WGTA. So it's massively helpful. And the two kind of go hand in hand. Like every now and then I'll plug WGTA on my FPL Pricey show and vice versa. So yeah, having those multiple streams massively helps. And the more different paths, I guess, you've got to get your name out there, it always massively helps.
Definitely. And the final one, I mean, this is sort of a question, but it's also just a bit of a shout out because, as I mentioned earlier, we are in a content creator group, which is awesome, isn't it? In terms of like the advice, and you can go in, we can go in there, and I just wanted to shout out Golden Goal Tom for setting up.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, it was really good. So, last two questions are a little bit fun in this section. How did you come up with the name FPL Pricey? And I've got a note here. The first thing that comes to my mind when I hear FPL Pricey is Haaland, because it's FPL and he's a bit too pricey.
I like that. I've never really put the two together, but yeah, I like that a lot. FPL Pricey is because my surname is Price, so it's as simple as that. So actually, originally when I first got my FPL Twitter account, I was looking around for names. I didn't really have any idea what I'd theme myself as, and obviously there are tons of names out there, so loads were taken. So I was like, well, it's got to be based on my name, because that's going to be the one that's least likely to be taken up. And I didn't actually originally go with FPL Pricey. I originally went with FPL Price is Right, or The Price is Right, something like that. And then after like 2 months, I was like, that is so poor. Like, I can do way better than that.
See,
I've been known as Pricey
one
forever, so I changed it.
You
prefer that one?
I prefer that one, but it's going to be automatically linked with the price.
It's too cocky.
But it's like The Price is Right for who? Like Haaland?
Yeah.
It's too much linked in.
Well, obviously, it's kind of tied to the show, The Price is Right, which is obviously quite an old show now. I think it was
Brucey,
it Bruce Forsyth? Yeah. Bit before my time, really.
Actually,
but I always
You do have a little bit of a young Bruce Forsyth feel to you.
Is it the chin? It might be the chin.
Yeah.
I'll take that. Fine.
I mean, he was married to Miss World, so I wouldn't take it as an insult, mate.
Okay. Well, I've got a beautiful fiance downstairs, so I'm just as lucky, I'm sure.
I'm sure she's a Miss World as well.
She is. But what was I saying? Yeah, so Price is Right, that's where it started. And I've always been known as Pricey at like school and growing up, because Sam's a pretty generic name in the UK. Loads of people in my year were called Sam in school and then college and then uni. So I was just like, yeah, just call me Pricey. It's fine. It's easier. We all of the Sams got known as our surnames, and mine was just Pricey. So by the time I switched Price is Right to another name, I was like, well, I'm kind of committing to this now. I'm in the FPL world. I'm just going to name it FPL Pricey because that's my name with FPL attached. And I've never seen any reason to really change it. And because people tend to refer, so the same way that on this show, I will sometimes call Ross Raptor or Oscar Focal, people will often just refer to me as Pricey. And that's great for me because that's also a name that I've always been called growing up. So it's just like someone calling me Sam. So that for me just fit really, really easily. And it makes it super simple for me.
I'll just add in, if I had followed the same logic for this channel, what I was called when I was younger, it'd be FPL Wanker, I think.
You know what? There's probably a handle for that already. There's someone out there that's definitely called that.
So, again, I usually guess the answer to this one. I'm going to guess no for you, Sam. Have you ever been recognised out on the street as FPL Pricey? And I just thought I'd mention this. I'm guessing you've watched the Tom one. He came up with the most interesting answers to this, as in he was recognised by a cab driver who hadn't looked at his face, but just from his voice, which still
that's so cool.
Yeah, but have you yourself, man?
I've not been recognised as FPL Pricey. I was at a wedding a year ago, and this is the only time this has ever happened, but it was a wedding where there was a lot of family and stuff, so there's definitely a chance that like one of those family members told this guy, but a guy came up to me and was like, oh, are you that fancy football guy I see? I was like, oh yeah I am. So that could have either been because of the channel, possibly, but more likely than not. Actually, I've just forgotten. There was another time, actually, a much better time at work. Someone that I'd talked to, he was on the IT team at a company called Somo that I worked with for a year or so. And he came up to me. He was already in like my mini league because we had a Somo FPL mini league. And one day he came up to me and was like, I see you on YouTube. I see what you're doing. You think you're better than me. And I was like, what? I don't know what you're talking about, mate. So he kind of found my YouTube channel, even though he already knew me. So it wasn't like
he had his own YouTube channel.
No. He was just really keen on FPL, and was like trying to win the same mini league I was. And then he must have like been like consuming FPL content on YouTube as you do. And one of my videos must have popped up. He was like, oh, I recognize that guy. So it's kind of like the reverse of what you're talking about, but like equally quite cool. It was quite nice when that happened.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, that's probably the most interesting one, but never really out in the wild generally yet.
So we'll move on to the second part of the interview now, Sam, which is where I ask about FPL and mental health. Just a reminder, if you're still listening to this point in the video, please like to help more people get to see the video, and please subscribe to help me get up to 500 subscribers for the channel before it hits its 5-month-year-old birthday. Thanks so much if you do this. This would mean the world to me. So Sam, what I usually ask here, first question is, has FPL ever affected your mood and health, mental health? And can you maybe separate that out, first of all, before you started creating content, because you were playing for a while before you started creating content, and then maybe as a content creator, and which I'm guessing maybe a little bit more, it affects you a bit more, maybe, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and again, this is just after I've watched the Ross show as well, and he talked really well on it, and I will echo one or two of his points, but I'll start off with before making content as well. And I think it definitely did get to me a little bit, but more, not necessarily the results of the FPL itself. It was more like when other mates were like lording it over me when they were beating me in mini leagues and stuff. That's when it really got to me, and then I started taking it more seriously on the back of it.
So what would they do? Because I'll be honest, I've been in lots of competitive leagues with people at work, but I've never had anyone really lord it over me. What would they say?
It's just like early season, especially when they know that you really like your football and you're chucked into an FPL mini league with people from the office or whatever, and some of them like their football but probably not as much as I do in most cases, and then others just don't like football at all and they're kind of just picking players they recognize. Every now and then you'll get like a comment in the office or between your mates like, how am I beating you? I thought you were meant to be good at this, kind of thing. When obviously you spend hours and hours researching these players, and even when I was casual, I was still like thinking about it a lot more than they would be. And if they're beating me after 6, 7, 8 game weeks, they would definitely be approaching me after work or like during lunch break or whatever. Like, come on, mate, what are you doing? Like, I thought you were good at this. Like,
kind of get the worst season I had. I think it's about 350,000, and there was a guy. 2 people beat me in the work mini league. One of them was he knew his football and would wind me up a bit about it. But there was also a woman who knew nothing about football. She'd miss game week deadlines, and she'd just walk past and say, without meaning any venom in it, I'm ahead of you still, aren't I? And I was like, yes. And that pissed me off so much more than the guy.
Yeah.
Because I was like,
I completely agree. It's the ones that don't care that like that annoys me more than anything, because like at least if you're beating me, be engaged, like really care about it, because then it's a fair fight. Whereas like if someone's beating me, it's like Man City going away to Rochdale. No offense to Rochdale fans, and then Rochdale just like steamrolling them. That's much more offensive to a Man City fan than well, maybe not now, but like a Liverpool or an Arsenal beating them. They'll be like, well, of course it's possible, that can happen. And when I'm up against someone, and now we're in the FPL community and we know all of these other creators, obviously you measure yourself against them a little bit more. You're not as disappointed if they beat you, because they know their stuff. They're like they care just as much as you, so it's a fair fight. Whereas the people that miss deadlines, like you say, don't care, don't even know the players that they're picking, if they're ahead of you, that really got on my nerves.
Yeah,
like, in the end, I would beat them. But
what the hell am I doing?
Yeah, literally. Like, why am I spending all this time picking these players that they're logging in 5 minutes before the deadline or like the night before, and just like, oh, that player did well last week, I'm just going to get him in. So yeah, that can be frustrating, and that got on my nerves to begin with. But once I got a bit more engaged in the community and I started caring about it a bit more, even before making content, it definitely did affect my mental health. Probably not as much as it does now for differing reasons, but there would be times where a game week doesn't go my way, or a specific fixture doesn't go my way, that before FPL I wouldn't have even cared about. It'd be like a Burnley versus an Aston Villa or something. And outside of FPL, I wouldn't really care. It would just be a nice neutral watch. I'd still watch the game because I'm obsessed, but I wouldn't care which way it went. It would just be interesting. Whereas now, if Ollie Watkins hasn't just gone and scored a hat-trick and I own him, then I'm annoyed. So it definitely got on my nerves. I learned fairly quickly how to deal with it, like in the sense that I could bring myself down from anger to just more like disappointment and acceptance. But it definitely still got on my nerves. And that's partly why I started creating content, because I thought that I'd gotten over that barrier where I really passionately care to the point where it ruins my weekend. I thought I've kind of like gone through that wall, and then another wall hit me once I started making content of like, oh no, wait, it matters a lot more now. And the consequences of your actions, if your decisions don't go well, you do open yourself up to criticism, and you're more on show. There's more pressure on you, or at least you feel more pressure. It's still not real pressure. Let's face it, it's fantasy football, but it's subjective pressure that you put yourself under. And again, the mental health side of it comes into it, and it's something that I'm really conscious of. I think I've only ever done one deadline stream, but I donated like the money to the Mind Mental Health charity because it was the most appropriate one.
Oh, awesome.
That I wanted to do a charity stream, whichever way, because it was my first ever deadline stream. And I think I picked Mind because it was like the most relevant one to FPL that I could think of, because I know so many people that like care so passionately about FPL as I do, as you do, as we all do, that it can really get under your skin. And I completely throw to one side anyone who says that, oh, it's just a silly game and you shouldn't care about it, because some of us spend hours and hours and hours on it. And yes, okay, it's something you can't control, but you're allowed to be upset by these things. You're allowed to care deeply about something, and you're allowed to feel those emotions, but knowing how to control them and how to get past them is also a huge part of it. So that's something in the last couple of years, making content has been more difficult because of that pressure, but also something that I've tried to stay really conscious of, and accepting that at times I will feel a little bit low because of FPL, but almost accepting that version of myself that, okay, it doesn't always go my way. Sometimes it will knock me a little bit, but I can rebound from it and get past it.
Yeah, and I'll reflect something Andrew FPL Nightmare said to me. He said that himself, like, you know, you need to accept that if something's important to you, it's important to you. It doesn't matter what it is. You know, for some people it will be computer games, for some people it will be how well they knit. You know, it's all contextual. And he even said, you know, he used to work for the Samaritans. If it's really getting to you that much, you know, seek help, basically. Okay, I know you've only got about 15 minutes before you have to go, Sam. So I'll move on to the next question. What tips would you give to someone? I mean, I guess we've just touched on it there. Who's struggling with their mental health this season due to FPL?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on it a little bit, but I didn't really explain how to kind of detach yourself from the situation. Like, I would try and build distance wherever possible between the game and yourself, especially if you're having a bad game week, but also just generally as well. It's good to detach your own persona from how you're performing in a game that you have ultimately very little control over. You can care deeply about it, but also there's nothing that you can do to influence the outcome of the decisions you make. You can make the decisions, you can base it on great data, but everything you do in FPL is between that Sunday evening to the Saturday deadline the following week. The players handle the rest. And once that deadline goes, it's over to them. And I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that if you can build these two versions of yourself, this separate persona that you can attach all of that anger and bitterness and frustration to, but also the euphoria as well, if it goes well. FPL Pricey has had a great day or a bad day or a terrible game week, or his captain's really screwed up for me. But Sam is still out in the real world. He's got a dinner with his fiance planned, or he's out meeting friends tonight, and
almost like having an avatar, an FPL avatar.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, kind of. And it seems silly because it's still you at the end of the day making the decisions. But that's one way that I've kind of tried to build that bridge where it's like, okay, I'm in FPL Pricey mode right now, and I probably will be watching the Villa Liverpool game tonight. But as soon as that game's off, okay, give or take 5 or 10 minutes, because it takes a little time to like switch out of that mode where you're a bit annoyed if something hasn't gone your way. But in the other real world, they're both real, but in the physical world, I've got a lot to be grateful for and a lot to be appreciative of. So I don't want to lose sight of that at any moment. And if you're ever really struggling to build that detachment between your FPL self and the game that you're playing and yourself, then I would build a physical detachment. So I do things like delete the app or delete Twitter, wherever you communicate with other FPL people. Not delete your actual account. That is very important. Don't do that, but just delete it or put itself on like a time limiter. There are some great time limiter apps out there that can like stop you from accessing for more than certain specific moments in a day. So you could do that, or manually or automatically if you like. And then the other thing is pretty obvious advice to some people, but to others maybe not so much, is go out, do a bit of exercise, go and have dinner with your mates or with your girlfriend if you've got one, or partner or whatever, and go to the gym, go for a little run, go for a little walk in the park, just anything to kind of bring yourself back into reality and into that physical world.
Do you think there are any changes that FPL, I mean, other fantasy websites as well, would could make to, you know, their website or whatever to help the mental health base of their players?
I do, and I'll caveat first off by saying that it must be fairly difficult for them, because FPL are at the mercy of the Premier League and the football schedule. So not everything they do is necessarily within their full control, but that there are things that I believe that they could do to balance it out a little bit. And the first thing is all about transparency. So price changes is one that has always kind of got on my nerves since I started playing the game, where it's not so much that the prices change midweek. I can get on board with that. I like the fact that it keeps you involved in the game throughout the week, and it kind of pushes people down different paths.
It annoys me, Sam. That annoys me. I've ranted on it.
Fair
before.
enough. I get that.
I won't rant again. I've ranted on the channel before about that.
No. That's absolutely fine. Again, different opinions is fantastic, and I welcome it. But the thing that annoys me about the changes in midweek is the lack of transparency over when they're going to happen. So I would be able to get on board with, I think in a perfect world, your version would be correct, where we almost don't have them during the week and they lock in at a specific moment and we know what's coming. But a sort of halfway point, a compromise would be, okay, we still have daily price changes at a set time, but we know 2, 3 hours, 4 hours in advance who they're going to be. And FPL tell us who is going up and who is going down. And I think that transparency would help people with their mental health, because it removes the doubt and the worry and the anxiety from the decision making. Like so many times over recent seasons, I've gone to bed thinking, do I need to just quickly check the price changes just before? Am I going to get locked out?
It's needless, isn't it?
It's so annoying. And look, don't get me wrong. I love thinking about FPL during the midweek as much as anyone else, and I do a lot of my research and a lot of my planning through the week. But the thing that does annoy me is that lack of knowing for sure whether something is or isn't going to happen that evening, and it might make you feel like you're under this imaginary pressure of, I need to move tonight in case it happens. And then the price change doesn't even occur in the first place. So all of that worry, stress, anxiety was for no reason whatsoever. So I think that's one thing they could change, a little bit more transparency there. To a lesser extent, on the same topic, the bonus points, the way they've changed it this season so that they leave it open to changes all the way through the rest of the game week, annoys me. And I like the fact that it ends up being correct, because they kind of tweak it to Opta and the final way that Opta distribute the bonus point system. But I prefer a VAR-less world, a VAR-less world, where people or things like this do go wrong sometimes, but at least we know immediately. Like there's no doubt over whether or not I can celebrate or commiserate. I know instantly whether a goal is going to count or not. And I also know instantly within an hour after the game's finished whether or not a bonus point is going to be locked in or not. It annoys me not knowing for sure 2 days later. If a game week's going to the Wednesday as well, it might be 4 or 5 days later, whether or not that bonus point is going to stick, especially if it's close. So that frustrates me a little bit. I don't know if you want to talk about those 2 points quickly first, but I've got another quick one on transfers as well, which I think would be helpful.
You've only got 5 minutes left before you've got to have dinner with your girlfriend, so maybe
Okay,
we can move on to the third point. I mean, I would say I would say I agree, particularly about viewers of the channel will know that I agree about the first point, but the second point, I mean, there's a need to be fastidious with, real football. There's a lot of money on it. There's not really with FPL. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know why they do that either.
Yeah. I think if FPL was a monetized thing, I would get it more, because being correct, 100% correct, there's actual money riding on it, so it matters. But it is a fantasy game at the end of the day. The whole beauty of it is it isn't gambling, and there's no money riding on it unless you're in like a private cash mini league, but that's a bit different. You go into that willingly. So yeah, I think that the speed and removal of the anxiety is more important to me anyway. It might be different to anyone else listening, but that's more important to me than necessarily getting it 100% right all of the time. And I feel the same way about VAR. I don't hate it as a concept, but it does sometimes annoy me, the amount of passion that drains out of
makes
absolutely sensational moments.
Makes things boring, in my opinion.
It does. Like, okay, it's correct, and I get that it's important to be correct in something that has as much money riding on it as professional football does. But some of the best moments in football are the ones where it's just raw emotion, euphoria immediately after that goal goes in. And I think we've lost that a little bit. And I really enjoyed Southampton's time in the Championship last year, going to the games knowing that VAR wasn't going to chalk off a close offside. There were at least 2 or 3 goals where I was like, that was off. I could see it, the lino couldn't, and I've just celebrated. And luckily, we're going to get away with it. And we have a laugh about it in the pub afterwards. And it goes both ways as well. Obviously, sometimes you get annoyed that it's gone against you, but I think it balances out.
I used to love the talking points, like when they'd say, oh, do you remember like Frank Lampard's goal in 2010?
Yeah.
I used to love those talking points, and now all we talk about is did VAR get it right, which is so much more boring.
Yeah, it's just adding another layer of subjectivity on, isn't it? Because it's just another guy. Unless it's the offside ones, obviously that's more objective more often. There's still a bit of
they get it wrong
a
bit
of subjectivity.
Well, don't they?
They do with the really close ones where there's not a good camera angle, and that's frustrating as well. But yeah, for me, VAR is just adding another subjective layer, another opinion on top of the referee's opinion. And I think it's being used as a scapegoat quite often now for referees to just give the obvious thing on pitch rather than the brave call that they actually believe to be correct. But anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. I think they could be doing something a little bit with FPL to make it a bit more transparent on things like price changes, bonus points, and how the goals and assists are distributed straight away. But also, quick one, how about 5 free transfers or 5 extra free transfers that you can use at any point during the season that you can use after the deadline until the game is kicked off? Ooh. So let's say, I don't want to change the time in which the deadline goes because I think there's a load of problems that come whatever way you do it. But how about 5, a bit like if you watch cricket or tennis, actually, you've got your Hawkeye. And so it's kind of the umpire will get told by the captain of the team, like, I'm not sure about that one. Could you check that upstairs? It's a bit like that. Like after the deadline's gone, I kind of a free get out of jail free card saying, okay, I've just heard after the deadline Gakpo's injured. Before he's played, and obviously switching to another player that hasn't yet played has to be the case. But 5 times a season, something like that, maybe once or twice would be fine, where you can make that swap knowing that it kind of like removes that issue from your side. I think that would be quite a nice little addition, but it's obviously quite difficult to code. So I understand that it might not.
So I was going to say I really like that one because I asked this question. I've actually thought of removing this question from the interviews because a lot of the answers are the same. But then when you said that, when I thought about it, surely it would just be moved. Couldn't they just move the deadline to kick off if they were going to do that?
They could, but then it only works if all the kickoffs are at the same time. Because you're always going to get early.
Oh, so you can do it through the entire game week?
Yeah, so you can
I really like
you can do it through the game week until the teams. So the same way the Euros one. I don't know if you played the Euros fantasy, but basically you can make substitutions until the game that the player is involved in has kicked off. So let's say Gakpo is injured. We don't hear about it until after the deadline. You've got until the Liverpool game kicks off to transfer him out using this like extra bonus transfer. That would be quite a cool way of doing it. Difficult to code, and I wouldn't want it every single week because
would it cost you a hit?
Interesting. Maybe that could be an interesting way of playing it. It costs you like an extra 4 points or something.
Well, if you haven't got any free transfers, I guess it.
Yeah. Good point. I was thinking of it almost like a smaller, less powerful chip where you can use it 3 or 4 times a season, where it's like just one extra transfer that you can make after the deadline until that player's game kicks off. But yeah, that could work equally. I haven't done a lot of thinking about it, as you can tell. So
no, I really like that one.
Mind map it.
That's interesting. I'm actually thinking of making a video where I email FPL with some of the ideas that have come up in this at some point.
Nice.
I will say at 7:30. Have you got 5 minutes to talk about how your season's going? Yeah,
let's do 5. Yeah, that's fine. I did message her sneakily, just saying I might be 5 or 10 late. So,
cool.
So I knew there'd be a little bit of leeway. But yeah, let's do it.
How is your season going, Sam?
Yeah. All right. No,
don't laugh too much. We talked about it before, and you're only doing slightly worse than me.
Yeah, to call it bad would be probably doing it a disservice. I'm just inside the top 500k at time of recording. Obviously, we've got 13 game weeks to go, so it's not a nightmare. I've got a lot of chips left to play. And obviously, the Villa game, which kicks off now, actually, it kicks off as we're recording right this second, could go my way, and I could end up in the top 400k by the end of this evening's recording. But I would say it's not gone ideally well so far. I'd love to be in the top 100k by this point. Top 200 would be also fantastic, but I'm about 20 or 30 points down from where I'd ideally want to be at this point. So I'm trying to look at it less about the rank I'm at, but more about the amount of points I need to gain to get to a point where I'm happy. And I think I'm about 55, 60 points from top 100k, and I'm about 30, 40 points from 200. So it's not terrible. I've missed out on a couple of hauls that if I'd got them, I'd be in a position that I'm very happy with.
Chris Wood.
1 or 2 decisions, basically. That's the difference.
Chris Wood.
It's Chris Wood. And I was going to add in as a bit of a jokey point, changes for mental health, like just not let me avoid Chris Wood ever again, because I don't know why I haven't had him all season, but he's been the nightmare, and he's just consistently pulverized me week on week, getting hat tricks when everyone's apparently selling him but still has 60% effective ownership. Obviously scored last week. I'm still betting against him because of the fixtures coming for the next 3 weeks. By the time this goes out, he's probably scored a couple of goals in each of those games as well. And I said to you off recording, I'm going to buy him for game week 29 when he's got Ipswich, when a lot of people are free hitting. I can tell you right now he's getting sent off in that game. Like I'm just not going to get any luck there. But yeah, it's 1 or 2 decisions have gone against me. Mistakes, you could call them, or just things that the outcome's been poor. I don't really know how you want to term it. But yeah, 400 to 500k right now. It's not going amazingly, but also I've seen people out there struggling more than me that I'd also back to turn it around. So I back myself to turn it around at this point as well. So fingers crossed.
I had Yelena on the channel a couple months ago, and I mean, viewers will know that I talked a bit about this with ads in the last video, and she was quite far behind me at the time, and she made a joke. Well, I was taking the piss out of her a bit, and she made the joke. Imagine if I finished in front of you this season, and I reckon she probably is, and it's probably going to be bloody Chris Wood. She's probably going to finish in front of ads as well.
Yeah, things turn around quickly in FPL, right? As well, you only need to get on one good player that no one else owns for a few weeks in a row, and yeah, all of a sudden that rank looks a lot healthier. So yeah, things can turn around really quickly. Yeah,
no, I'm in a very similar position. I'm hoping. Well, I'll ask you this before I ask the last question. Have you been a fan of the assistant manager? I mean, you went the Moyes Emery route, I guess. I was on the Slot route. Are you a fan? And how do you feel it's gone?
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of people talk about it as if it's like gambling, and I can see the argument, but I also don't think it is any more gambling than like picking a goal scorer, like for FPL as well, because you can bet on goal scoring odds. So I don't really see it as gambling necessarily, but I do see it as needlessly complicated, and I think that's something that needs to be thought about for next season.
Sorry, but Sam, I'll have to make it a bit defensive because I made a video basically arguing scam. I think, and there was a thing on Twitter about it today that we were both tagged in. I think
Yeah, I was tagged in it as well. Yeah, I saw.
It's just moving the bar a little bit closer to gambling. I think that is probably
fair.
the thing. But
yeah, because you're now talking about teams rather than players. So yeah, I will concede you're right there. Like it does bring you closer to gambling, but the crucial element is still missing, and that is the spending money on it. Yeah. So that I can definitely see the argument that it's worrying moving in that trajectory, but I wouldn't levy it as the criticism I'd use against it. I'd use it as I'd say the fact that I had to spend a 25-minute video just describing how the chip worked tells you all you need to know about like how needlessly complicated it is. Like you talk to someone in the office who doesn't know much about fantasy football, trying to describe the assistant manager chip to them takes 15-20 minutes. And even after that, they might not fully understand or might miss something like, oh, I'm tripled up on Liverpool, why can't I get slot? And it takes a little getting used to. So I think personally, it's something that either gets simplified or gets removed for next season. But I don't massively hate it myself. And the reason I don't hate it is because I believe at least, plays into the hands of people that really do a lot of thinking about FPL. And the more engaged managers can at least have the upside of chasing after the big hauls. Whereas managers who are more casual might just go after the managers that they like an Arteta 3 weeks in a row, something like that. So I think there's opportunity there and there's upside, but the annoying thing as well is this season in particular, it launched in game week 24 and straight away you've got a double for Liverpool. So for a lot of managers, the obvious and like the genuinely correct route, if you didn't already have triple Liverpool, was just to go slot and back 5 games in a row for him. And that's obviously worked out pretty well so far. But it's kind of taken all of the fun and the excitement and the interest out of it, I think, for this season, which they couldn't have possibly known when they created it.
I mean, I'll revise my opinion slightly that I've given. I have enjoyed it. It's given me something else to think about, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, last question, Sam, before I let you go and have dinner and watch Villa Liverpool. What would be your general tips to someone in terms of how they can have a good FPL season?
Oh, yeah, tough one. I would say to consume content, that is for sure, but figure out very quickly.
Particularly who got the assist and FPL Pricey.
Yeah. Subscribe to FPL Pricey, all of that good stuff. No. For me, the crucial thing is that there's so much noise out there now with conflicting opinions because there are just millions of content creators and millions of people in the community that if you look for anything or any particular argument when you already know internally what you want the answer to be, you will find a piece of content that agrees with you. And then you will use that as the excuse to go there. So 2 points on that. Number one is trust a limited but respectable amount of creators that you throw a lot of you hold in high regards and that you trust to give good advice. Whether or not it goes correctly is a completely different matter, but the advice they give that they give you is based on data that you trust and data that you accept as the right way of playing the game. So have a limited pool of respected creators and people in the community that you listen to, but then also never go into research knowing what you want the answer to be. Go in open-minded, thinking, right, it could be anything from A to Z, and I'll let the research dictate my opinion rather than my opinion dictating the research I look for. And that's a mistake I've made in the past where I wanted player X. Let's say let's say, I don't know, Watkins 2-3 seasons ago, and I looked for every piece of data I could find to support my thesis, rather than looking at the wider data, which was actually there are 2 or 3 other strikers with better data, better fixtures, whatever, better minutes that actually would have made more sense if I actually looked at the data that was available properly. I was actually just pinholing it in on this 1 or 2 like sample size data points, and I came to a conclusion based on a limited pool of data. So that would be my advice. Open mind, do the research with the open mind before coming to the conclusion, and trust a very limited but respected pool of creators that you kind of like accept and agree with their general take on the way FPL should be played.
How would you? I mean, this is a bit of a conceptual question. How should someone arrive at the conclusion of which content creators they trust? Is it the ones that have a process that they respect or they would follow themselves? Would you say?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. So not necessarily one that you necessarily would follow yourself to begin with, but that you respect the way that their brain works. So someone, and I love shouting Prass out because he's just amazing. I love him.
Yeah, Prass, yeah.
But yeah, he's brilliant. And I even though I don't always agree with what he does in FPL, I love the logic that he applies to everything, the way that he processes information. And the same can be said of Ross and obviously Tom, my co-host, and also Harry as well. Mark as well is another one that I really respect. All of those guys, I really enjoy the way that they map out their research and the way that they come to their conclusion. And although I might not always agree with the conclusion, I respect the way their mind works, and I enjoy the way they come to that conclusion. So it helps form my opinion by going through that process myself.
And they explain it to you, particularly Praz. That's one of the things.
Yes.
I said it to him when I interviewed him. It's that he explains the process so much you can almost see the
the way his mind's or cogs turning in his
mind.
Exactly.
Even though it's like well above any level of FPL mind thinking that I could think of.
Yeah.
Any other
by the end of his video, I understand it. That's the great thing. Like he talks about all of these guys that I've just mentioned, talk about it so neatly and so concisely that something quite complex becomes quite simple after listening to them. So yeah, shout out to all of them. They're all fantastic. And there's loads more outside of that as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam, for coming on. I'll let you go and have your dinner. And anything you wanted to say before we finished? I know this is
not at all, really. Just thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed it. It's a great channel, and I hope you get all the success that you deserve, and crucially hit 500 subs very, very soon. And I guess last thing before I wrap up, fingers crossed for Emery and Villa tonight, because I've got him as my assistant manager. So by the time you listen to this, it will all end in tears, I'm sure, and Slot will get the points again, I'm certain. But I still live in hope right now.
And just shout out, I know this is going to appear on Who Got the Assist a couple of weeks after it's been on my channel. Hello to Who Got the Assist listeners. Please do consider subscribing to FPL Have a Beer.
100%.
Thank you so much for joining. Please please subscribe, as Sam said, to help the channel get up to 500 subscribers before we hit our 5th birthday. And I'll see you in the next one.